Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at Max, the Curse of Brotherhood. This is a game that I often mistake for another game that looks very similar, that's actually a horror game of a little boy trying to, I think, save his younger brother. Um, the video game industry, very incestuous, stealing each other's ideas, copying each other. This game was made by Press Play in 2014, according to Steam. It's published by Xbox Game Studio, so it would either be a Summer of Code type game that was funded in part by Microsoft, or Microsoft slash Xbox acquired the company after the fact. Uh, Certainly, both of those are very possible, and that is fairly baseless speculation without doing any real research. Uh, and I really don't have much other setup to go with this. You can see under the options there's very little. I turned on the subtitles. What's funny is it says help and options, and the only thing that really would be considered help would be the controls here. And you can definitely see here that they are showing what kinda looks like an Xbox 360 controller. I guess that would be right. It's not. It doesn't have the extra share button right below the Xbox button, between the pause and the back button. Um, and that would be the major difference between like a 360 controller and an Xbox One or an Xbox Series controller, whatever. They really didn't upgrade the Xbox controllers for the Series games. As far as graphics, it's just high, medium, and low. And by default, it was at high. As far as languages, there's a collection of games here. This game is made in Unity, and most recently it feels like Unity is doing its very best to be a different kind of company instead of making a game engine. And that may spell the end, or the beginning of the end at least, of seeing what would have been indie games, particularly that came out during the 2000s, 2010s, that looked really, really good and were fairly easy to make. Nowadays, though, arguably even an indie developer might get away with using the Unreal Engine without that much of a struggle, and so even an indie developer can make games look very, very good. But this was definitely the beginning of that. Certainly, the 2010s, 2000s, and particularly Xbox Summer of Code games that were getting a little bit more funding by Microsoft to look a little bit better. Now, if this was a 2022 game, and I was looking at this menu, I'd say, well, almost certainly this car that's driving by is a pre-made asset, and the trees and the house and the picket fences are all pre-made assets that would have been bought out of the Unity store. But that only is just a first appearance assumption on my part, and I don't think the actual game plays with these visuals that much anyway, so this menu is just something extra. And arguably, modern games don't even really need the menus so much, so just jumping into the game has become something that more and more games are doing, and not the majority yet, but I think we will start to see more cases where you just jump into a game and then you start the game immediately with no main menus. And we already see with consoles, the games often are suspended, and so you don't ever actually actively exit out to a menu anyways. One of the problems here I'm going to have is I've been playing with a Nintendo Switch controller, so my thumb keeps trying to go backwards with the where the A and B buttons are. It tries to flip them in the more Japanese style. So here we have Max, and this really looks more like a Blender rendered animation you might see from a animation studio. In fact, it frankly looks too good potentially for what the game actually is going to be. Brother,
brother, oh brother of mine, I wish you could be erased from all of time. I wish your traces could be gone from all places. That evil itself could take you away and leave me alone on this very day.
This is exactly how the beginning of the movie The Labyrinth goes. There was a kid toy that was the male equivalent of Polly Pockets back in the 80s called Mad Max. And I can't help but have this slight memory to think that Max here is in part inspired by Mad Max. Which, frankly, bringing back or rebooting Mad Max wouldn't be a terrible thought.
Felix?
The giant hair is a little weird for a kid. It's very, like, Goku Dragon Ball-esque. One of the things that was fairly consistent with the Xbox Summer Code games is that they tended to look very pretty. They definitely were designed to be a showcase game. I would say the edge detection and the animation there on these platforms are not particularly great. There could be a level of improvement there. I have no idea how long this game is going to be either. Let's see. Just gotta get clear jump to get up higher. There's a lot of oomph and awing going on here, as the camera also has chosen to take us down into a more zoomed out section. Noticeably, I went back at the went the backwards direction from the right to left and did not find any secrets. And this would definitely be an area for achievements and secrets. And a game and a platformer are going to inherently have more viability with secrets. His legs dangling very awkwardly there. We're seeing a lot of movement tech being shown off, like this was more of a tech demo / vertical slicing. Frankly, a lot of those games were. I definitely liked the idea of the Xbox Summer of Code, and there was a few kind of interesting standout games, but none of them I think really led to sequels or the companies getting more funding or making making any real success there. In fact, seems to be very much the case that it is a rarity to see a indie developer succeed at all. Their best case scenario often is just that they get acquired. And so the idea, even though that same idea of funding new companies still is a thing, it is not really a thing that's led to more kind of AA quality instead of AAA quality games, which is with these visuals, this is definitely a game trying to be a AA quality game instead of being a single A quality game or just an indie game, whatever that would mean.
That's my brother!
Yeah, you would see more companies now funded probably more in the focus of making mobile games, and this is a kind of perfect example of what a mobile game would look like or work as in 2022. There's an inconsistency here between whether something turns into a swing or something turns into a climb. And in that case, that inconsistency turned that rope into a swing. And then you have a problem, certainly, where you have effectively a QuickTime event here that you can either do with actual QuickTime event buttons, or you can have the player actually play it, and then if they fail, they just have to go back to a checkpoint. And in this case, they went with the checkpoint idea instead of QuickTime events, but many games of this era in particular leaned towards QuickTime events, often with no real fail scenario at all in the QuickTime events. You're not getting a lot of rewards for climbing high up on the ropes. This might be more of a game where it is like what is that game that has all of the instant deaths that you just have to die the first time to know it? I guess I'm thinking of Prince of Persia. That is probably one of the earliest games with that example, where you have many points in Prince of Persia where the ground will just break under you. There's some waviness here. I'd also say that the story, I think, does fairly well here to show Max being the cause of his brother disappearing, but not being such a jerk that he's actually happy about it or actually thought that it was going to happen. Now, I'm fairly certain there's another element to this game that we eventually get to.
Hey, who's doing that?
So the idea of just platforming alone like we have up until this point, I think, is going to be augmented with a better system. Now, that's a little confusing, certainly, that you can jump up to the thing above you.
What the? Water?
So we're seeing water and tree branches. You're seeing a lot of camera angles happening here that are probably not necessary. A little restraint in controlling the cameras is probably smarter. But yeah, they quickly have made a situation here where the player knows that Max is a good kid. He's not just super happy that his brother's missing, or that he doesn't care one bit about it. But it definitely feels like there's an overemphasis on visuals here. I have no idea how long this game actually is going to be. Looking at these cutscenes, I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a 2-hour long game.
I'll tell you how to save the brother.
Huh?
Let me describe. For centuries, I have sheltered this world against Lord Mustachio. Lately, Mustachio has gained the upper hand.
I don't like that there's a skip button right in the top
So is he.
of the screen, particularly when they brought the camera angle in, and there's black bars at the top and bottom.
Corpus. Your brother. Mustachio keeps Felix there. Succeed where I fail. Go to the castle. Stop Mustachio before he absorbs Felix. But beware Mustachio's eyes. Now, Max, hand me your weapon. I will grant it my soul.
This old lady is animated different.
Magic marker.
Like
That will do.
sharper edges instead of the smoother edges you see in Max. And yeah, I get the idea of Max being a little kid and not being as having as many sharp edges in his face, but that was a pretty big difference there. So now we have a magic marker.
Your weapon contains my soul. Only you can wield it, Max. Go on, pick it up.
Now, see, if this is supposed to be kind of a kid-friendly game, which it feels like it should be, then using phrases like weapons and souls
Yes!
On you go, Max.
seems to be a mistake.
Waiting.
I mean, that's a second rewrite you could certainly do,
Your weapon
Where?
can clear the path.
or you could just say, your item now controls my power. So right trigger does something that feels like it is slightly feels like that is slightly something that could have been experimental and new. You don't see a lot of the idea of drawing on a screen in Xbox or original console games.
What you create, you can destroy.
You tend to more often than not only see drawing on the screen for games like the Nintendo DS or maybe the Switch in more modern times. And yes, certainly the Nintendo DS and the Switch and the Wii and all of those introduced a lot of gimmick things, and this dangerously gets close to it being a gimmick. And it seems like there's an area of effect that, at least at the moment, limits you to only drawing this at this one point and destroying this. So it doesn't feel like you're left to your own devices. When you walk over these jumping rocks, that doesn't do anything, so that's just an indicator where you can do something.
Your weapon will be drawn to nature's most powerful places. There, I will help it gain in strength.
So it seems like we're going to be on a bit of a quest to charge up our magic marker. Probably part of the reason why Mad Max as a
The town
toy
is not
line
far.
that had
From
a
there,
short
you can
running
enter
cartoon.
Mustachio's lands.
One of the reasons why it probably didn't work too well is it was a little late to the party as far as monsters and toys being sold around monsters, where like Ghostbusters had already gained most of the interest around that.
One of Mustachio's eyes. Destroy it if you can.
Alright, so what? Well, I don't have anything to destroy it with, so well, that is the right move. And you just press Y to tear it off. Interesting.
Here.
No! No, no, no!
We're already into a third cutscene in less than 20 minutes. And we do seem to have a collectibles of 75, which is not an awful small amount of collectibles. It does feel like, though, that there's going to be a level of requirement here where you're going to end up having to move further ahead than you would like fairly often and at a fairly quick pace. A lot of death sequences here that are somewhat questionable. If I jump in and do this, it doesn't freeze time. Okay. But if you hit that, that doesn't work either. So I feel like I probably did it right the first time. It may be very much just a case, though, that you have to get almost an exact right height, which seems like you can climb a lot higher than it would seem like you could. But that definitely seems like that is going to be the requirement as far as getting to this. And how many times are we going to see this cutscene of him just pulling it?
Be gone.
It does just oddly seem like they have... Can I pull this? It does seem odd that they've made a system here to potentially animate the same thing over and over again. It feels like it kind of snaps to the right place. Alright, so let's do that one. That one. That one. I wonder if there's a specific amount as far as the height to get the green to show up. And with the green, that's really your focus. Am I supposed to attack that? The answer is no. Yeah, arguably, it might be a case where I want to get lower. Can I do that? Yeah, let's see what happens here.
Max, you have found the first piece of my broken amulet. See if you can find them all.
So there's 18 secondary collectibles, and that was our first achievement. I guess the idea here is that you could do something like this. Then you could do something like that. And just hope that's high enough. And that seems like that's high enough. The problem with this, I would say, is that you are getting limited to using the same gimmick over and over again. Interesting, you have this foreground thing. It definitely does kind of feel like, though, that this is supposed to be some pitfall type gameplay where you are just going to fall to your death or die a lot. It is nice, though, that you don't have to, like, have a limited amount of ink in your marker, and that you aren't having to constantly destroy things to barely have enough resources. I can't help but assume that this is going to be some kind of monster that I'm supposed to avoid. Probably by doing that. We have a decent variety of enemies that were being shown. It's not a crazy amount and not a crazy small amount. There we go. I've just gotten yet another achievement.
Nudge, nudge.
Yeah, it does definitely come off as more of the feeling and idea that that it's a big successful experience to find one of the eyeballs, but it doesn't honestly really feel like that. Right. So our goal here is to bring that up and hope well, that's not quite what I was hoping for. Guess I'm supposed to go over here for safety. And then we'll just wait for it to walk under me. And then we'll lock it into the under area where I was. And I'm going to be straightforward and honest here. This is going to be probably the last level we do for this recording. Not for any real stylistic reason other than I am desperately behind as far as recording content, and YouTube likes shorter episodes anyway, so 20-minute, 30-minute episodes per level may be all we do for this game, which I don't know if too many people will even really complain about that, but there's definitely a scenario here where I could play through this entire game in one sitting. Doesn't mean anything that this rock formation kind of looks like a dog or animal. I'd say probably not. I need to get over here. See, now I may be trapped anyways. But at least what I can do is opt for coming over here to grab this. And see, that's yet another achievement. This definitely is reminiscent of a bygone era in which achievements were a much bigger deal. The Dutch angle concept, the tilted camera, that's what a Dutch angle is. Really, I don't think has much business even in movies, let alone video games. Now, did I get the eyeball? I don't know. Let's go decent height over here. Then decent increase in height over here. And clearly the trick here is to learn that you can go back and forth, which almost gives you infinite height if there wasn't a limit to just how high you could draw. That may have been too high. Which then that does start you over again. So you have to be fairly careful not to push it. Once it kind of hitches for half a second, that's the time to stop going. And if anything, it may have a level of kind of acceleration here where it stops hitching the higher up you go.
On you go, Max.
It's funny is there's a bit of a frame hitch there. Right. And so now we are at Blackrock Cavern, and when we pause the game here, we can see that we have 4 evil eyes and 1 secret to find, which if that brings everything down fairly easily, that means there's probably about 15 levels in total in this game, and if there's 15 secrets, that would be about 15 levels again, and 1 secret per level. I would say you would lean probably closer to 20 levels than 15, but some of those would be the early tutorial levels. And then when you see that kind of scope and scale, that does imply to me that this may very well be less than 2 hours of gameplay, and we may just power through it and 100% this game fairly quickly. The Summer of Code type games that did come out never really were that long. There was just more of them, frankly, than would have been otherwise. But yeah, this seems like this is going to be mostly all there is to it. Like, we'll do more levels, there'll be more challenges, it'll get a little bit more difficult, but we'll probably just be pulling evil eyes. There might be a boss fight at the very end, but the boss fight may very well just be a platforming chase sequence like we saw at the very beginning of the game. Clearly this isn't a horror game. This is a game that's trying to be fairly kid-friendly, so this is not the other game that looks somewhat very close to this. But I couldn't even tell you what the name of that game is. So, yeah. And I guess I really don't have anything else to say, so that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get to make a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.